Kevin Stefanski? Gone. Andrew Barry? Right behind him. Because the internal belief, according to sources close to the organization, is that if something doesn't change drastically and soon, the Browns risk losing the only thing they haven't completely burned to the ground. Shedeur Sanders. Yeah, the rookie phenom, the savior, the one spark of light in the darkest Browns timeline, the man who was supposed to be the change. But now, it's not even clear if he wants to stay. Let's walk through this because it's more complicated than bad coach, fire coach. What we're seeing here is a full systemic failure, with Stefanski sitting at the helm of a sinking ship and Shedeur stuck below deck, watching the water rise. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. You've got a franchise QB, young, talented, dynamic, being smothered under an offensive scheme so flat, so outdated, it could have been lifted from a playbook written on stone tablets. And you want to know the worst part? Everyone sees it. The locker room, the fan base, the analysts, even ownership, yes, even the Haslams, have reportedly started asking questions about whether Stefanski era has run its course. And at the center of all of this, the growing fear that Shedeur Sanders is going to look around, see the flames, and decide, yeah, I'm good on this. Because let's be honest, what's keeping him here right now? Not the system, not the support, not the results, not the offensive line that can't protect a folding chair, not the front office that thought running a four-way quarterback competition in the preseason was a good idea, and certainly not the scoreboard. This is where the so-called betrayal narratives fall apart. The idea that Shedeur is somehow turning his back on the Browns? No. The franchise turned its back on him the second it chose chaos over competence. And now, that decision may cost him everything. Insiders are already leaking it. Stefanski's on borrowed time, barring a miracle turnaround, which, let's be honest, is about as likely as a dog pound suddenly hosting the Super Bowl. This will be his last season in Cleveland, and it goes deeper than just Stefanski. Andrew Barry, the general manager who once looked like a quiet genius for assembling a deep, versatile roster, now looks like a man who tried to play chess using Connect Four pieces. The roster's bloated. The quarterback room is a graveyard of regrets, and the development pipeline? Bone dry. You know it's bad when even Dylan Gabriel, another young QB prospect they brought in, is being mismanaged so badly that fans are missing Case Keenum. Let that sink in. So what's the plan? What happens now? Because make no mistake, there's a plan. Or at least, there's a beginning of one. And it centers on one objective. Protect Shedeur Sanders. This is no longer about saving face. It's about survival. If the Browns lose Shedeur mentally, emotionally, or physically, they're back to square one. Again, for the 10th time in 20 years. And ownership knows it. That's why, behind the scenes, there are already quiet talks of who might replace Stefanski. Not just any coach. Not just a football guy. But someone who understands what Shedeur needs. Someone who can build a system around him, not force him into one. Names are already floating. Young, offensive-minded guys. Quarterback gurus. Leaders who understand the new NFL, not the 1990s rerun version Stefanski seems to be stuck in. Because this isn't just about a new face on the sideline. This is about a new era. One that finally lets talent flourish instead of forcing it to survive. And speaking of survival, let's talk about the quarterback room. Or what's left of it. This thing has been a disaster since the jump. First, it was a competition. Then it was a meritocracy. Then it was a let's throw four quarterbacks into a blender and hope one survives strategy. The result? Confusion. Hesitation. Zero chemistry. It set the tone. It told Shedeur and everyone else that the coaching staff didn't know what it was doing, or worse, didn't care. Add to that a rotating door of receivers, a run game that feels allergic to success, and play calling that could best be described as death by dump-off, and you've got yourself a full-blown identity vacuum. That's the real problem. The Browns don't know what they are. They're not a run-first team. They're not a spread team. They're not a power team. They're just a team, a collection of athletes. running plays, hoping it works. And you don't keep someone like Shedeur Sanders with hope. You keep him with vision. So now the franchise stands at the edge of the cliff. They can't run it back. Not after this. Not after a losing streak this long, this humiliating. Not after 50-point blowouts and locker room infighting, and weekly pressers that feel more like hostage videos. No, something big has to happen. A clean break, a new playbook, a culture reboot. Something that tells fans, and more importantly, Shedeur, that this isn't going to be another chapter in the long, sad story of Cleveland quarterbacks. That maybe, just maybe this time, they're willing to evolve. But it has to happen fast. Because Shedeur is not going to sit through 2 more years of give us time. He's not going to get sacked 36 times a season, while the coaching staff debates whether or not to open up the playbook past page 4. He wants to win. He knows he can win. And if Cleveland doesn't give him the pieces, he'll go somewhere that will. And that brings us to Cincinnati. Oh, yes, the looming threat, the final, poetic gut punch. Because if there's one team perfectly positioned to capitalize on Cleveland's dysfunction, it's the Bengals. Burrow's injury? Devastating for them. But an opportunity, if he can't recover fully, if the timeline slips. Suddenly, Cincinnati becomes a real, terrifying possibility. A functioning offense. A winning culture. A system that wants its quarterback to take risks. That thrives on improvisation. That has receivers who can actually catch. If you're Shedeur, how you say no to that? You don't, unless Cleveland gives you a reason to stay. And firing Stefanski? That might be the first one. Because at this point, there are only 2 paths. 1, keep Stefanski, ride out the season, lose Shedeur mentally, and risk losing him altogether. Or 2, clean house, build a system around your most valuable asset, and finally, give this franchise a chance to break the cycle. The Browns are out of runway. The next move has to be bold, has to be smart, has to be decisive, or else this isn't just the worst season in Browns history. It's the one that cost them everything. So what's it going to be, Cleveland? Stick with what's broken? Or finally fix what's been wrong for 20 years? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Should Stefanski be gone before season's end? Can the Browns save Shedeur Sanders, or is it already too late? And hit that subscribe button, because whatever comes next, we'll be right there, front row, popcorn ready, watching history unfold. One meltdown at a time. Let's not act like firing Kevin Stefanski is some shocking, revolutionary idea. Because when you lost 8 straight games, when you're blown out 50-0 on national television, and when your franchise quarterback is visibly disengaged, we're not talking about rebuilds anymore. We're talking about a rescue mission. And the Browns? They're not driving the ambulance. They're still arguing about whether the sirens are too loud. Let's just call it what it is. This team is broken, top to bottom, from scheme to sideline, from leadership to locker room. It's not just a coaching problem. It's a cultural malfunction. And now, the clock is ticking. The future of the franchise is in the hands of a 21-year-old quarterback who might already be planning his exit strategy. And honestly, you can't blame him. You think Shedeur Sanders came here to throw checkdowns in a scheme that hasn't changed since the Bush administration? You think he committed to Cleveland, to become another name on that sad, haunted list of quarterback busts they keep updating like a public shame wall? No, he came to build a legacy, to break a curse, to prove he could do something no one had done before, win in Cleveland. And instead, he walked into a front office that thought giving 4 quarterbacks equal reps in training camp was a genius idea. A coaching staff that couldn't figure out if they wanted to run a West Coast offense or just stall for 3 hours. And a playbook that treats 3rd and 7 like a death sentence. So yeah, the betrayal isn't Shedeur walking away. It's the franchise wasting his time. Now, let's talk about the insider leaks. Because this whole plan to remove Stefanski after the season rumor, it didn't just leak. It was practically shouted from the rooftop of the team facility. And let's be real, you don't leak something like that unless you're already halfway through the process. This is how NFL power shifts work. Quiet calls, subtle denials, then one big, very intentional leak to test the waters. They want to see how fans react. They want to see how the locker room reacts. But more than anything, they want to see how Shedeur reacts. Because let's not kid ourselves. This isn't about a coaching philosophy anymore. It's about retention. Cleveland can survive another bad season. What it can't survive, losing the only player who gives them a shot at the next decade. They're terrified, rightfully so, because if Shedeur walks, and let's say it is to Cincinnati, the Browns don't just become irrelevant. They become a meme. Again. So ownership is watching and planning, carefully, surgically. And Stefanski? He's a dead man walking. Oh, he'll finish the season. Probably. Unless things get so ugly that they have no choice but to pull the plug early. But behind the scenes, they're already building the next pitch. A new offensive mind. A QB-centric vision. Something flashy enough to convince Shedeur that he doesn't have to leave to win. And let's be honest, it's going to take a hell of a pitch. Because even if they fire Stefanski, the Browns still have to answer for everything else. The offensive line that gives up pressure faster than it takes to say sack. The wide receivers who run routes like they're being paid by the hour. The playbook that looks like it was last updated on a flip phone. The culture of fear. Of mediocrity. Of just good enough to fail dramatically. You think one coaching change fixes all that? Not even close. This is going to take a full teardown. Not of the roster, of the philosophy. You can't just throw a new coordinator at Shedeur Sanders and expect him to stay. You have to show him a vision, a future that he wants to be part of. Because right now, he's got options. Not just rumors. Not just whispers. Options. You think other franchises aren't watching this disaster unfold and circling like vultures? They are. They know how this works. You let a young star rot in a broken system long enough, and eventually he starts looking for the exit. And once that thought is in his head, good luck getting it out. You think the Bengals wouldn't love to slide in and rescue Shedeur? Let him play in an offense that actually believes in innovation, with weapons, protection, a front office that knows what it's doing. You think the Saints, the Falcons, the Seahawks, any number of teams, wouldn't move mountains to give him a clean slate? He knows it. His team knows it. Cleveland knows it. That's why the Stefanski decision is about more than coaching. It's about control. The Browns have lost control of their locker room, of their messaging, of their narrative. The only thing they still have control over? Shedeur. And that grip is slipping. So now, every move they make, every leak, every press conference, every scheme adjustment, is being watched through one lens. Does this convince Shedeur to stay? That's it. That's the real mission. Not making the playoffs. Not saving face. Not salvaging the season. It's about convincing the one person who still has the power to save the franchise that it's worth saving. And that's what makes this next decision so critical. Because firing Stefanski might not be enough. It might be the bare minimum. What comes after matters more. Who do they hire? What system do they install? Who's allowed to stay? Who gets shipped out? And above all, is Shedeur part of the decision-making process? Because if he's not, that tells you everything you need to know. The Browns can't afford to make this decision without him. They need to let him be the cornerstone, the leader, the franchise. They need to hand him the keys and say, this is your team now. And then they need to mean it. No more quarterback competition. No more earning reps. No more systems that treat elite talent like a square peg in a round hole. It's a show, or they're going to lose him. And when they do, they won't just be losing a quarterback. They'll be losing the last good thing they had. So Cleveland, time to decide. Are you ready to become something new? Or are you going to be the same old Browns? The ones who always find a way to mess it up? The countdown has already started. You don't get many more chances like this. Shedeur is watching. The league is watching. We're watching. The course? It's on fire. The GPS is broken. And Shedeur Sanders is halfway out the car window wondering how much longer he's supposed to smile and pretend everything's fine. And yet, somewhere inside the Browns front office, inside the sleek boardrooms and beneath the billion-dollar branding, They finally started to whisper the words no one dared say out loud a month ago. We might have to fire Stefanski just to keep him. Of course, being Shedeur Sanders. Because make no mistake, this franchise no longer revolves around the head coach. It doesn't revolve around the GM. It doesn't revolve around the defense, the logo, the fan base, or even the city. It revolves around one man. And right now, that man is surrounded by dysfunction, playing an offensive system that looks like it was put together using Google Docs and wishful thinking. Let's just zoom in on the last few weeks. 8 straight losses. Not 1 or 2 close heartbreakers. We're talking full-on blowouts. 50-point obliterations that have opposing fan bases apologizing on social media. You know it's bad when Pittsburgh fans are like, damn, are they okay? Spoiler, they're not. The locker room is fractured. The offense is a nightmare. No one seems to know what the identity of this team is anymore. And Shedeur? He's just standing there with the calm of a guy who's already made up his mind. He's not throwing tantrums. He's not going rogue. But you can feel it. The detachment, the distance, the cold professionalism of someone already calculating his next move. And the Browns front office feels it too, which is exactly why this leak about Stefanski being potentially removed after the season isn't a leak at all. It's a trial balloon. It's ownership floating a test message to Shedeur and the fan base. Look, we see the fire. We're working on it. Don't go anywhere. We got you. And let's be real, it's the right move. It's also the last move. Because if firing Kevin Stefanski doesn't send the signal that the franchise is finally ready to pivot toward its future, toward a new identity built around the one person with actual star power on his roster, then nothing will. The message has to be clear. We will tear this thing down to the studs to keep you here. Because here's the scary part no one in Cleveland wants to admit. If they lose Shedeur, it won't just sting. It won't just hurt morale. It will destroy the soul of this team. This was supposed to be the moment, the reset, the miracle, the moment the Browns finally joined the modern NFL. Instead, they got Shedeur running plays that would barely work in the pack. 12, surrounded by a patchwork O-line, with receivers who can't get separation, and a coach who still treats audibles like personal insults. And again, let's not pretend Shedeur is the one being difficult here. He came in, head down, ready to work. He studied. He listened. He played the game. And after watching the offense sputter for 8 straight weeks, after realizing he's throwing into triple coverage because the route tree is a trapezoid, he had enough. He didn't explode. He didn't demand a trade. He just stopped pretending. That's when the narrative shifted. Not from the fans. No, the fans saw this coming. But from the inside, from the so-called trusted voices in the building who started quietly suggesting maybe Shedeur was a problem. Maybe he was too confident. Maybe he wasn't coachable. Maybe he didn't fit the system. Sound familiar? Because it should. That's how the Browns always lose their quarterbacks. Not by direct sabotage, but by slowly bleeding them out with passive-aggressive blame and outdated systems. The only difference is this time, it's not working. Shedeur doesn't care about your system. He doesn't need your approval. He's not here to wait 4 years to grow into the playbook. He is the playbook. The Browns can either figure that out or get comfortable watching him light up the AFC somewhere else. You think that can't happen? That it's just rumors? Okay, but remember this. Shedeur doesn't owe Cleveland anything. He didn't grow up in Ohio. He wasn't drafted with some huge savior of the city marketing campaign. He was brought in to play football, to win. And if he looks around and sees that the people in charge don't care about winning the way he does, he'll walk. And he'll thrive somewhere that knows what to do with him. Let's say it together now. Cincinnati. Because that's the name that keeps popping up. Quietly, like a ghost on the sidelines. Joe Burrow? Hurt. The Bengals? Still stacked with talent. And the idea of Shedeur stepping into that offense. Swapping chaos for structure. Stagnation for speed. It's terrifying. Not for fans. For Cleveland. Because if that happens, if the Browns let that happen, that's not just losing a player. That's betraying a city. You don't get to beg your fans to believe again after that. Not after Shedeur walks into a division rival facility and becomes a problem for the next 10 years. You lose everything at that point. Respect, trust, relevance. And here's the brutal truth. The front office knows it. That's why the Stefanski whispers are getting louder. That's why they're already evaluating offensive minds around the league. That's why they're leaking just enough to keep Shedeur from checking Zillow listings in Louisiana. They're not trying to win the division anymore. They're trying to win him because they know that Shedeur is the franchise now. And the longer they wait to admit it, the harder it'll be to keep him. So here we are, a franchise at the breaking point, a locker room in quiet revolt, a quarterback waiting for a reason to believe, and a fan base that's been through too much to stomach another rebuild. You want to save Cleveland? It starts with one move. Fire Stefanski. Not next season. Not when the time is right. Now, rip the Band-Aid. Clean the wound. Show your quarterback and your fans that you finally get it. Because if you don't, you're not just losing Shedeur Sanders. You're losing the last shot at being taken seriously ever again. Now tell me in the comments, who should replace Stefanski if, when he gets fired? Which coaches actually understand how to build around a star QB? Is this already too far gone? Hit subscribe. Because whatever happens next, we're going to be here for it. And something tells me the fireworks are just getting started.